Hi everyone. I'm just trying to make sure everything is working. So give me a hi in the chat if you can see me and you can see my screen and all of that. So I know everything is in order. Okay, perfect. I think there's a slight delay between my broadcasting time as well, but that's completely fine. So first of all, apologies for the camera quality. I was trying to use my camera, but there was a really odd lag between my camera and the broadcast. So I'm using my webcam on my laptop. It's not the best, but it will do for today. So we all know what we're here for. Today's live is going to be all about drafting training contract applications and kind of going through apps that you guys have submitted to me so I can flag up kind of common errors and how I personally would edit certain application answers to improve them. So yeah, and I'll just explain to you guys how everything will work. So thank you to everyone who has submitted their answers for today's live. I've been wanting to do something like this for a long time where I can help you guys directly with your applications and also create content that is educational and can help anybody who's applying for a training contract. So I've picked out a range of application answers that we can go through, and I've tried to make these really varied. So we've got a competency question, we've got a commercial awareness question, a why law and a why this firm question as well. And I've been running a poll to ask you guys what types of questions you guys struggle with the most. And on my Instagram story, people voted commercial awareness was the questions or type of question that they struggle with the most. Whereas here on YouTube, I can see we're kind of tied between commercial awareness and why law and why this firm. So I'll definitely prioritize these questions over the competency question, and we can get to the competency question if we've got time. You're all here today, so I am sure you guys are well aware of the importance of application technique. Essentially, application writing technique, I always say, is a skill in itself. It's something that you develop over time, and it's something you kind of get the feel for the more you practice. So I always encourage people to start drafting applications as early as you can. That way you can get the most practice with doing it. But the reason why it's so important is you could have the greatest CV in the world, you could have tons of legal experience, tons of transferable skills. But if you're unable to communicate that effectively through how you draft your application, those skills and experience aren't going to get you anywhere. You need to be able to write in a clear way, make sure you're clearly answering the question, and you need to be able to communicate your own personal motivations in terms of why law and why this firm in order to make your application stand out. And then the next point on here is why reviews like this are helpful. Essentially, you can get another pair of eyes over your application, because I've been there myself. When you're working on an application for so long, you can get tunnel vision. You know, you spend so much time on something, you think, of course, I've answered the question. But you know, there are situations where you might think you have done, but when somebody else reads over it, they can come back and tell you that I think you've kind of gone down the wrong track here. So I think reviews are extremely valuable, and I would encourage you all to find people to help you review your apps before you submit them, whether it's having a mentor help you with that, or a friend or family member, or even using, say, a paid application review service. And that brings me to the Corporate Law Academy. So today's stream is sponsored by TCLA. Let me know in the chat if you guys have heard of TCLA. I'm sure lots of you will have already heard of them. They're essentially an online platform that are dedicated to providing training and support for anyone applying for training contracts. And I'm so pleased that they've agreed to sponsor this stream, because I genuinely really love TCLA and everything they do. over the past 3 years, every single mentee I've worked with, I've always recommended TCLA, and they've also kindly given us a discount code for anybody who's watching today to use if you do want to join TCLA and get a premium plan, but they have loads of free content as well. And after we look at a few questions, I'll be telling you guys a bit more about TCLA and specifically about their application review service. So let's get to it then. Onto our applications. So I've just popped on here the first application we're going to be looking at. If this is too small, let me know. Hopefully you can all see what's on the screen. So this is a commercial awareness question. The question was, please could you discuss a current legal case that's caught your attention? Why does this interest you and what are the implications? And this was an application for Mishcon de Reyes. So they specifically said here that it doesn't need to be a case from their firm. So before we get onto the actual answer and breaking that down, I just wanted to break down the question. The question is, of course, always going to be your starting point when you are looking to draft an application. And I also think you should revisit the question while you're drafting your answer as well as after, just to make sure you are answering the question and hitting all of the points. So if you look here, they've said they want a current legal case. So my interpretation of that is either a case that's ongoing or something that is quite recent. And they want to know, one, why does it interest you? And then two, what are the implications of the case? So let's take a look at what this applicant has said. They've said, a case that's caught my attention is Smith and Pimlico Plumbers, the most recent litigation of which took place in March 2021. Specifically, in 2018, the Supreme Court ruled whether the claimant counted as a worker and whether he was entitled to the benefits that went with it. Pimlico, which was represented by this firm, argued that he was self-employed, and the Supreme Court upheld the decision that he counted as a worker. The case has the potential to make clear the status of workers who are employed in the gig economy. Being defined as a worker comes with a whole series of benefits, such as, and I've just listed the benefits here. A case is like this, the most recent one of which ruled on the length of time before a person can no longer claim holiday pay, clarifies the nature of certain types of employment over what is currently a relatively new and grey area. In this specific case, the court decided that because Pimlico exercised administrative control over Smith, imposed conditions around how much it paid him and on his clothing, and restricted his ability to carry out similar work for competitors, supported the conclusion that he was a worker and not genuinely self-employed. As such, this case clears up in part the boundaries around which a self-employed person moves into the status of worker. This and its importance to what is an evolving field is something I find immensely stimulating and interesting. So after reading that, the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is your writing style and how you decide to present your answers. So whatever you write, whether it's an application or a letter or an email, you should always think about who is the reader and how is it going to come across to them. When you write applications, the initial people who are going to be reviewing your applications and deciding if you're going to make it through the initial application stage are most likely the graduate recruitment team from this firm. So that's the first thing to note. A lot of the times, the first person reviewing your app isn't going to be someone who is specifically a lawyer. They might work in a law firm and be familiar with what lawyers do, but they might not be a lawyer. The second thing to remember as well is these people are going to have so many applications to read. You guys will know that some firms have thousands and thousands of applicants, and there is somebody who has to read all of these applications. So the importance of writing in an extremely clear style is that you want this person, as soon as they read your app, you want them to be mentally checking off in their head, yep, they've answered that part of the question, yep, they've answered that. So we want to essentially make their life easier, and we want things to be really easy to read. if I look at this example, even just this little phrase here, the most recent litigation of which took place in March 2021, it's quite a roundabout way to make the point of when the last hearing of this case was. And I wouldn't write in this way because it just confuses the reader, and it means that they have to put extra effort into understanding what they're saying. Instead, we want to make it really clear. So, I mean, let's think about how we can make this more clear. You can just say the most recent hearing took place in March 2021. Even though the word count hasn't changed that much, it's just a lot more straightforward. I mean, we will probably have to edit this a little bit just to make it link on, because that reads a bit funny at the moment. But I would try to phrase it in this way because it's a lot more straightforward and easy to read. Similarly, if we look at some of the other sentences here, so especially in this area of the answer, this is really descriptive. They're really getting into the details of this case, which is really good because I can tell that this applicant, has really understood the various factors that the court has looked into, as well as what the legal implications of the case are, which are what rights do workers have. But these sentences, I would say, are just a bit too long. The longer your sentence is, the more you start to lose the reader's interest. So I would really try to cut this down, either maybe only mention a few of the factors, or maybe split them into separate sentences just to make it easier to follow. The other reason why having a clear writing style and writing concisely is so important as well is it helps you minimize your word count. So like I was saying earlier, here they can cut out a lot of these factors, and that frees up a lot more of their word count for them to answer other aspects of the question, which are, why does this interest you and what are the implications? So that's the first point with this answer, is that I would just edit it a bit so that it's more straightforward and easy to read. Now, going back to the question and whether this answer has answered the question, I would say it's not really answered the question too effectively. If we look at the question, they do ask you to discuss the legal case, and there is a lot of discussion in this answer. I would say up to this point, all of this is essentially describing the case and discussing the details of the case itself. And then when it comes to why does it interest you, we've got here that they found it interesting because it's an evolving area. And then when it comes to implications, they've got here that the implications are that this case is clearing up the boundaries in which someone moves towards the status of worker. So we can already see that they've used a lot of the word count describing, which isn't necessarily what this question has asked them to do. This question is really asking them, why are you interested in a case and what are the implications of the case? And they've spent this much of the word count actually answering what the question is asking. So if I were answering this application, I would very simply just describe the case in one or two sentences, and going back to structure and making your answer really easy to read, what I would do is, hang on, let me just put this in a different color. So I would explain a case that has caught my attention. Oh, can't type. And then I would literally just have a sentence here to explain what the case is about. So I'll just name the case, and I would probably just explain this is a Supreme Court case where the court was deciding whether a gig economy worker has worker status or self-employment status. And then I would, straight after that, then move on to the other aspects of the question, which is, why does this interest you and what are the implications? So, and then we would move on to the implications. Right, so now let's think of the content. if we want to explain why this case has interested us, what we really need to do is we need to explain the why. I think a lot of the times a common mistake people will make here is that they will make a point about the case, but they will fail to explain the why. So let me explain this a bit further. Here, this applicant has said the reason why they find this interesting is because this is an evolving area, because essentially this is a significant change in case law and it could perhaps continue to change in the future. So they've made a point of this is interesting because it's evolving, but that still doesn't answer the why. And if I were speaking to this applicant, what I would want to know is, but why is the fact that it's evolving interesting to you? So you not only need to explain why this is interesting, but it needs to be personal to you. You need to be making some kind of personal link as to why it's interested you. So I've looked briefly at this applicant's CV as well to see if I could pull out some type of personal link. Let me just add here that we want to be making a personal link. Hopefully you guys are following this and it's not too chaotic. So we want a personal link here and we need to explain why. So having looked at this applicant's CV, I can see that they were a non-law student and they studied history in their undergrad. So a possible personal link they could be making here is that they could be saying throughout their history degree, they really enjoyed studying historical events which have shaped society. And then they can try to make a link through their enjoyment of having studied something that is evolving to a case like this. So they could make a link between having enjoyed studying evolving, not evolving society, but having studied events that shape society. They are therefore interested in high-profile cases like this one that would have significant impacts on how the relationships between companies and employees are in the future. So that's a potential personal link they could make there. And I hope you guys can see that it's not only making a point of this is interesting because it has significant impact, but also explaining why that's interesting to you. And then also evidencing what you've said by referring to, I was a history student, I really enjoyed studying these things. That is why I find a high profile case like this interesting. Another reason I thought of here that this applicant to use to explain why they found this specific case interesting is perhaps making a link to technology. So this would be a really good link to make if this person has anything on their CV linked to technology, whether that be they just, helped a society start a new website or something as simple as that. But the link we could make here to technology is that we can look to explain that gig economy is something that has come about because of technology, because of apps like Uber and Deliveroo. This is why this whole economy of workers has developed. And this case is essentially showing that technology is developing at a really fast pace. However, the law needs time to catch up to that. So this is interesting because it essentially shows that although tech companies can go on and develop all of these amazing apps, there is still a legal risk that a new piece of case law could essentially try to regulate what they do and perhaps make what they do less profitable, as would have happened here because workers now have additional rights. So that's a link you could make if you had any personal experience with tech. You could then link that in as to why you're interested in the tech aspect of this case. So that's how I would suggest to this applicant on how they can expand further on why this case has interested them and make that very important personal link. And with personal links as well, I think including a personal link in any answer, whether it's a commercial awareness question or whether it's a why this firm question, the personal link makes your answer unique. And it also makes your answer really strong because you're providing them with evidence as to why you're interested in something. if we think about it, anyone can say that they're interested in this case because it's setting a new precedent. But not everyone can say, well, actually, the reason why I'm interested in new precedents is because I studied history for 3 years and I've always been interested in how society evolves or key events that cause a change in society. So you're saying something that not everybody else can. And that's what really shows the firm that you're applying to, that you've really thought about this and that you're genuine with what you're saying. So now moving on to the wider implications. If we just go back to the question here, they've just asked, what are the implications? And I think that's worth noting because they've left the question quite broad. Sometimes when I've seen questions similar to this from other firms, they might say, what are the implications for our firm? Or what are the implications on clients? But here they've not defined it at all, and they've left it quite broad. So if we think about the potential implications here, I would say there are 3 kind of groups of implications that you could be talking about here. So the first of these is there are obviously legal implications to this, in that in order to comply with the law, companies who have these kinds of workers need to be giving them the rights that they're entitled to. So those would be the legal implications, which you could explain. The other implications would be implications on clients and implications on the firm itself. And I think these 2 areas are where you can really show off your commercial awareness and take your answer to the next level. If we look at what the applicant has done here, they've said this case clears up the boundaries around which a self-employed person moves into the status of worker. So they're really just commenting on the legal implications here. They've not gone further to comment on the implications on clients and the implication to the firm itself. And I think if they kind of reduced all of this description and then spent the word count talking a bit more on these 2 issues, it could really improve this answer. So I'll explain to you guys a bit more about what I mean in terms of implications on clients and the implication to the firm. So with clients, if you're applying to a commercial firm, most of the time your clients will be big businesses out there who instruct the commercial law firm. So if we think about, and the reason why I'm flagging this is I think with a case like this, it's very easy to just jump on, well, this obviously has an impact on Mr. Smith himself, but because we're applying to a commercial law firm, we want to think about it from their client's perspective. So we need to be thinking about this from the employer's perspective and how this will impact them. And if we think about it, where we are giving a worker more rights that they're entitled to, but things like time that you can claim holiday pay and additional benefits, essentially, because they're entitled to more benefits, the companies need to spend more money on employing these workers. And that's going to mean that the company needs to think about how to deal with those increased costs. So they could either pass on the cost to the customer by increasing the price of their product or their service, or they can look to cut costs elsewhere. So that's something you could be flagging here. This is an implication on clients of the firm from this one case. And this type of explanation will really show your commercial awareness, because it shows that you're thinking about the wider picture. As a commercial lawyer, you know, not only do you need to understand the legal implications, as we've explained here, but you need to understand the wider picture of how this impacts clients' businesses. So that's something you could be adding in here to show that commercial awareness. And then finally, we'll come to the firm and the implications on law firms. And I think with other firms, when they ask this question, most of the time they are asking about implications on the law firm. And whenever I come across something like this, I think the answer is always somewhere along the same lines, which is, what are firms' goals? We need to think, well, for law firms, at the end of the day, are there to make a profit. And how do they make profit? By getting more clients to instruct them to help with their legal matters. So in order to think about how this specific case will impact firms and their ability to make money, we need to think about what are the opportunities here for firms, and how will clients' need change as a result of this case. So if we think about this here, what will clients need as a result of this Supreme Court judgment? They'll essentially need advice to understand whether they're complying with the law. So are they already giving their workers the rights that they are entitled to? They might need help with reviewing their employment contracts to make sure all the necessary rights are set out properly in the contract. And if for whatever reason they aren't following the law, then they'll need advice on how to essentially treat their workers so that they are getting everything they're entitled to. So overall, clients are going to need more employment help. So we can look to explain that by explaining, as a result of this, companies, or clients rather, will be needing more employment advice. So this is an implication on the firm, is that they can look to take advantage of them by pitching, say, their employment team in order to help with these additional legal queries which clients will have. So whenever you're asked about what are the implications on the firm, always think about, but have clients' needs increased or decreased, and how can the firm cope with that? Hopefully that's made sense. I feel like that was very rambly, but that's how I would look to improve this specific answer. I would reduce all of this description, because the description isn't helping us answer the question of why does this interest you and what are the implications. Instead, I would answer why this interests you through explaining a personal link as to what's something you've done that is linked to this case. And then I would look to think about not just the legal implications of this case, but the wider implications on clients, kind of the commercial impacts, as we've talked about, and whether there's an opportunity in here for firms. So that's the first question. I don't know if you guys have any questions or comments you want to make about this answer, or just any questions you might have about answering commercial awareness questions. If we move on, I'll just give it a moment in case anyone does have any burning questions on this one. Okay, I can't see anything coming in, so I'm going to assume that that was crystal clear and you guys have no further questions on this one. Oh, Chloe said this is so helpful. Thank you, Chloe. Hopefully I'm not rambling too much. I feel like I do tend to do that, but within my rambles, there is some sense in there. Okay, I've chosen this one for the next one. Why, essentially this is a why law question. I think this is another question that you guys wanted a bit more help with. So if we have a look at this, the question is, why do you wish to pursue a career as a commercial solicitor? So it's quite an open-ended question. Essentially, they just want to know, why have you picked law, and very specifically, why commercial law? Now, let's look at the response drafted here. They've said, living in an increasingly globalized world, I'm fascinated by how strategic analysts and creative problem solvers can make a sustainable social impact. As the role of lawyers is expanding, becoming both legal and business advisors and soon technologists, sustainable social impact is achieved more efficiently, which draws me to a career in commercial law. My first experience of this was leading a team in a competition. My team and I conceptualized the idea of a watch that also functioned as a taxi calling service, using the Internet of Things and automated vehicles to improve the mobility of the elderly population. However, I raised the issue of who liability would fall to if an accident with the vehicles arose. So I proposed an alternative solution to collaborate with Uber if this concept did come into fruition. Fostering my creative problem-solving mindset and solutionist approach, My team won the competition and received £300 investment after pitching to 5 representatives. This experience taught me that I enjoy understanding a client's industry considerations before creating innovative solutions and providing a high quality service to clients to make sustainable changes. Right, so I think the first thing that stood out to me when reading this answer is that I don't feel like it's clear to me why this applicant is interested in commercial law. If we look at what they've written, they've commented on kind of strategy, so the strategic aspect of commercial law, and they've also commented on creative problem solving and a sustainable social impact. So I feel like these are the main points they're saying, that they're interested in law because of being able to think strategically, being able to problem solve, and being able to make a sustainable social impact. But I almost feel like they kind of niched down their answer a bit too soon. I feel like they've jumped straight into the sustainable social impact in the very first sentence. And the reason I'm focusing a bit on this is if you think from grad rec's perspective, if you are looking for potential lawyers, you want to find an applicant that would enjoy every aspect of commercial law. You know, you want to find someone who wants to work in that fast-paced environment, someone who's interested in business, someone who's interested in using their legal skills, which might be organization, problem solving, teamwork, drafting, attention to detail. You want someone who maybe wants to work on kind of international, multi-jurisdictional deals, etc. And I feel like this applicant has only really covered a very kind of small aspect of what commercial lawyers do, especially with raising the sustainable social impact and here as well making sustainable changes. I can see where this applicant is coming from because you guys might have been seeing this application cycle, especially with COP26 going on as well. ESG is a really huge issue for corporations out there and law firms. So I can see why they've, decided to kind of cover that aspect of commercial law here. And I also saw on their CV that they attended an event about COP26. So there's definitely kind of a personal interest there from this applicant in terms of sustainability and climate change. But I think they need to take a bit of a step back here because being a commercial lawyer isn't just all about problem solving to achieve sustainable social impact. I think sustainability is probably a part of it because whenever we're advising clients, if there are any risks to them from an ESG perspective, we want to be able to be flagging that to clients, and especially where we work in areas where we have to comment on ESG and regulations specifically. However, on, say, I don't know, like 80% of the work, you might not be coming across this. So I would just say that they've kind of focused on this one specific issue a bit too soon in their answer. With these types of why law questions as well, I always think that the best way to answer these types of questions is by storytelling. So what I mean by storytelling is by explaining where your interest in law first started, and then essentially taking the reader through your journey, through everything you've done to confirm that commercial law is the right route for you. So the way I would do this, so having looked at this person's CV, I made a few notes on it. Hang on. So this person did a law degree. They did an undergrad degree. They have volunteered at a law center. They've also done a role where they managed a team of 8 and worked and managed deadlines. Oh, actually, let me just copy and paste my notes. Okay, so this is essentially this person's career journey and some of the things which they've done. Now, we need to think about how can we tell a story using these experiences as to why they're interested in commercial law. So they've kind of started off here by talking about problem solving. So that's what I would probably start with. I would start with the fact that they've studied law at undergrad and they really enjoyed the problem solving aspect of it and build from there. So that's the first point we can make, that they've enjoyed problem solving from undergrad and they think that a career in commercial law can allow them to use their problem solving skills. Now, then we need to build on that a bit further and refer to their experience. And the reason why I think it's important to refer to all your experience here is, first of all, through all of these things this person has done, writing in a law blog, going to the Legal Cheek internship, volunteering at a legal center, they're clearly dedicating a lot of time towards building their legal experience and finding out more about law. So just by flagging these experiences, we can almost already show, without explicitly writing it, that I've invested a lot of time into building my experience for this career. So that's already one benefit from mentioning all your experiences. And then by mentioning these other experiences, just roles that they've worked in, what I'm going to try to get at here is the work environments this person essentially performs the best in. So they've worked in a team before, and we know that in commercial law, a lot of the time you're going to be working in a big team. And another point they can look to make as well is that often you might be working across various offices or working on a deal that has lots of different parties on it. So there's a lot of teamwork and collaboration required in law. So that's one point they can look to make. And then they've also worked in environments where they're able to manage deadlines. So taking from that, they've worked in fast-paced environments before and they've enjoyed it, hence why they want to do commercial law. Here, I would make a similar point here, just that they're able to or rather they enjoy collaborating with lots of people. So I would kind of start from here. I would say they did their undergrad, they enjoyed problem solving, they wanted to find out more about what being a lawyer is like. So they decided to start volunteering at a legal center. And I would probably add after that what they took away from it. So perhaps they were able to solve a problem creatively while at the legal center. I would mention something like that. And then I would talk about the work environment that's relevant in commercial law as well with these aspects. And then I would move on to this, which would be kind of the more commercial aspects of it, kind of considering how law can impact companies and the fact that in commercial law, you're going to be working with big global companies that can make an impact on key issues such as climate change. And then that's when I would probably mention COP26 and that this person is interested in trying to contribute towards making a sustainable social impact as well through being a commercial solicitor. I feel like with the way this applicant has drafted this, they have attempted to make that personal link. However, I think where they went wrong is, again, they're just too descriptive. They put all of this just describing, oh, hang on, it actually starts here. They've put all of this kind of just describing one situation and one of their experiences. Whereas instead of getting all of this detail, what I'd really like to see is I want to see their whole journey. I want to know everything they've done up until this stage. And I want them to be telling me every single thing I've done has pointed me towards the fact that I should be a commercial solicitor. So there's a big difference when you're telling a story and you're saying everything I've done until this point tells me I should be a commercial solicitor versus just mentioning this one experience and saying this one experience specifically has pointed me towards this. You can just build it up a lot more through doing the storytelling. What I'd really like to do is kind of take this journey away and maybe draft an example answer for you guys to see. So maybe I won't do it now because it'll take me too long and you guys will be sitting here for like 20 minutes watching me write something. But if you want to see how I would use these points to draft an example answer to this question, let me know in the chat. If enough of you are interested, I will go away after the stream and do that and post that on my Instagram for you guys to see, because I think that can really help you guys see what I mean by this. I feel like this is the really awkward part of just streaming by yourself. When I take a break to drink water, it's just awkward silence and you guys watching me. So sorry about that. Does anyone have any questions or comment they want to make about answering a why law question before I move on from this? Let me know if you do. Also, I'll probably cover one more question after this. So I'll just put a poll up now in the chat so you guys can let me know what you want to see next. Oh, now I need to figure out how to make a poll. You can tell that I'm new to this. Right, create a poll. What type of question should I review next? And the questions we've got left are why this firm and a competency question. Bear with me. Right. I should have put that poll up now, so hopefully you guys see it. And feel free to vote about what we'll do next. In the meantime, oh, hang on. Someone's just asked, how far back would you say is reasonable to discuss your experience? For example, if you graduated a few years ago, is it still relevant to talk about things you did in sixth form or even earlier? Really good question. I think with like what I've said earlier is that you should be starting from kind of what very first triggered your interest in law. So if it is the case that what really first triggered your interest is something that you experienced quite a while ago, I would still mention it, but I would just mention it quite briefly and I wouldn't spend too long on it. I think the rest of the experiences you mention as part of your story should be experiences that are more recent, probably in the last 2 or 3 years or so. I wouldn't spend like the majority of the question talking about something that happened to you like 5 years ago, because you still can, but I think it would just make your answer weaker. So it would really depend on you and your CV and what you've got on there. But if possible, I would try to use experiences that are a bit more recent. Hopefully that's answered your question. Okay, it looks like overwhelmingly everyone wants to go over why this firm. So I will do that as the final question we review. But before we go on to that, I'll just chat to you guys a bit more about our sponsor, who are the Corporate Law Academy. So I mentioned this at the very beginning, but they have so many resources for you guys. So anyone who is an aspiring solicitor and looking to apply for back schemes and training contracts. And I genuinely really love TCLA and everything they do. I think everything they put out there is really high quality. And I mean, I've seen not all of, but a lot of the paid stuff. And I just think it's excellent. So in terms of the things that you guys can access for free, they've got a forum, which I think is really helpful for anyone that's actively submitting applications, because people are on there chatting about kind of how to approach a specific challenging question that they've come across in an application, just asking questions about the training contract process, and also kind of discussing like have you heard back from this firm? I feel like when you're waiting to hear back, you kind of want to know, have other people heard back, etc. So there are threads on there kind of with all of this, which is really helpful. And I believe as part of the forum team, there is someone who is a previous graduate recruitment member. So I find her responses really helpful. And TCLA also have webinars. So they actually emailed today with another webinar they're holding that looks really good. They also have free guides, and they have a newsletter that comes around into your inbox, and that has kind of commercial awareness news stories and kind of also like motivational tips about how to approach the application process, which I find really motivating myself, even though I'm not making applications actively. And then, of course, they also have their premium plans. So I'll just bring that up. They've got two options. And because we're talking about application reviews today, I'm going to focus on their gold plan, which includes one free application review per month. And you get that back next working day, which I think is amazing because we all know with deadlines and how tight those can be, I think that's really valuable. And they have a whole host of other things that you won't get for free. I also thought this was really cool. They have a video interview simulator. So they essentially allow you guys to access the video interview software and practice. And I've never heard of anyone else providing something like this. So I think that's just great. And of course, they've given me a discount code if any of you do want to sign up to the either of the premium plans. And the other thing I think is really great about TCLA as well is that it's just a monthly kind of payment. So it's not ongoing and you can cancel it as soon as you no longer want it. So if you're kind of really focusing on applications for a month or two, you can just get it for a month or two, which I think is really good. And I'll just cover a bit more about their application review. So they'll essentially be doing what I've been doing today on these two questions, but just in more detail. So they'll provide you guys with detailed line-by-line comments on your applications, and I'll show an example of this in a bit. But the whole team are essentially future trainees who all have experience with law firms and the commercial environment. So they're able to give you more specific advice that perhaps maybe your friends and family might not be able to give you on your applications. And they've been doing this for a few years now. So they've got experience with reviewing thousands of applications. So I think if you guys are looking for, oh God, what's happened? I was going to go to the slide anyway. But anyway, if you guys are looking for really detailed feedback on your applications, I would really recommend checking out TCLA and everything that they provide. And as you can see here, there's an example of how they would give you feedback on your applications. And what I really like about this is they're not spoon feeding you guys. They're not telling you the answers. They're just essentially flagging to you the areas where you might have missed something out. So you can see here why, not why, but you can see here that the applicant hasn't answered why. So the comment is, what makes you say this? And I actually think this is such a helpful way for you guys to receive feedback because it's really teaching you how to think about the way you're drafting as opposed to telling you what the answers should be. So, you know, if you have the gold membership and you just get one app reviewed that month, you can still take all the learnings from the feedback and apply that to all of your other applications. So yeah, highly recommend checking that out. And of course, you can use my discount code if you do sign up for any of the premium plans. So moving back to applications now. Thank you for voting. So we'll skip this competency one and move on to a why this firm. So this question is about BCLP, and they wanted to know, what do you find attractive about our sectors or departments, and what areas are you interested in having exposure to in your training contract? So it's not the standard why this firm question, but it's still asking, what about the firm and the training contract are you interested in, essentially? Right. So let's have a look at the answer here. So they've said, my desire to join BCLP stems from the firm's fresh and dynamic approach to the law, within which real estate is a part of that I'm keen to explore. Now, if we just stop here, going back to what I was saying about your writing style, if I were editing this, I would really change this up. I think it's written in quite a roundabout way, which might make it a bit difficult to read. And, you know, you might have to read this a couple of times even to understand what the point is. And I also think because it's the first line of your answer, you really want it to be a very, very clear sentence. So you're drawing the reader's attention right away. So let's think about how we can kind of change this up. And the other thing I would say here as well is they've mentioned fresh and dynamic approach to the law, but you could say that about any firm. You know, you could put any firm's name in here and just say they have a fresh and dynamic approach and I'm interested in that. I think instead of saying fresh and dynamic approach, I would really try to find something that is very specific to the firm, or be able to have something to evidence this. So if you do genuinely think this firm is fresh and dynamic, can you add something off the back of this sentence to explain why you think that? So is it someone you've spoken to that's said something to you that makes you think that it's fresh and dynamic? Is it the way they've approached a certain case or a new initiative that they've rolled out? So for example, if I was really interested in a firm because of their innovation, I might say, I'm really interested in this firm because of their innovative approach. And then I would try to evidence or explain what I mean by that by explaining, you know, for example, this firm has developed 2 AI apps for their clients to use. So you just need to add something a bit more in there to make it more specific to the firm, because if you're just writing, you know, if you're just using adjectives to describe a firm's approach, it's not necessarily specific and you can be talking about any firm here. So that's the kind of comments I would make on the first line. And then I also think here is, again, it is just quite difficult to read. So if I were answering this question, we also have to think about what is the question asking. So the question isn't asking about BCLP generally. They specifically want to know what sectors or departments and areas you're interested in having exposure to in your training contract. So they essentially want to know what seats do you want to do here and why. So I would almost just start off my answer with answering the question right away. So here they've talked about real estate and later on they talk about employment. So I might even just add straight in here that I'm interested in gaining exposure or experience in both real estate and employment during my training contract, instead of this kind of more roundabout sentence with kind of something that's a bit non-specific here. So the next part of this goes, in order to get a better understanding, as it is not a sector I've had much prior experience with, even so, I'm keen to delve into new fields and pursue the opportunity to consolidate other legal landscapes. So again, with this, I feel like this language is a bit flowery. It's a bit like, you know, we want to put something in there that sounds good and maybe comes across as more professional language. But actually, my reading of this is that there's not much substance in a sentence like this. I still don't really know why this person is interested in real estate. And in fact, the other thing they've done, which I would really advise against doing, is they're flagging something that's actually a bit of a negative. They're saying, I'm interested in real estate, because it's not something I have much experience with, or I'm interested in real estate, although I don't have much experience in it. So I would really remove kind of more negative sentences like this, because it's really not adding anything. And instead, I would almost say that it's pulling you down. So I think what's missing here is both a genuine reason from this person why they're interested in real estate and a personal link between them and real estate. So if I were to write this, what I would do is think about, what is interesting and different about real estate as a seat, and something that real estate lawyers might be interested in is that the work that they do is very tangible. You can be working on kind of like a landmark building in London, like the Shard or the Walkie Talkie building. And, you can leave work after you finish the transaction and know that you've worked on something that's really tangible. Like the outcome of your work is something that you can see. It's not like a financial product, like a bond or something like that. You can actually see the outcome. And I think that's a reason I hear a lot about why people are interested in real estate. Other reasons you might have that draw you towards a certain area is maybe the actual work and the skills that are involved. So from my very brief research on real estate, it seems like you can be working on kind of really big matters. So like you could be working on a portfolio with lots of different properties, and also there's a lot of drafting involved. So those might be the things you'd want to be saying about why you're interested in a specific seat. And then you would look to make a personal link between the points that you've made and yourself. So I've looked at this person's CV to see what relevant experience they might have in doing this. And although they've written in their app they don't have much experience in real estate, they actually attended either a Law Careers Live event or a Bright Network event where they did a commercial real estate workshop. And as part of this event, they also had another workshop where they reviewed and amended an agreement. So I would almost look to try and make links between that experience and their interest in real estate. So they might want to say here that they're interested in real estate because of the really tangible outcome. And, maybe that's something they enjoyed from the commercial real estate workshop they did. And they may also say here that they spoke to trainees at the Legal Cheek Law Fair and understand that real estate is a seat that involves a lot of drafting. And they, did that work with the agreement where they reviewed and amended an agreement, and they really enjoyed that part of being a lawyer. Therefore, they want to do a seat that allows them to do a lot of drafting. So hopefully you can see there that what I've suggested is a lot more specific than just saying they're keen to explore real estate because it's not something they've done much of yet and they want to explore that. So moving on from that, they've said they attended the Legal Cheek Law Fair and spoke to current trainees about the firm's strong real estate practice. So I like that they've done that. I think, wherever you have opportunities where you have networked and you have spoken with someone at the firm, it's always really helpful if you can include that in your answer, because you're essentially evidencing the fact that you're dedicated enough to this firm to do that initial additional networking, but you're also able to evidence your points a bit more. What I don't like about this, however, is there's not much, there's just something missing from it. So they've talked to current trainees and heard about the strong real estate practice. Okay, they go on to kind of talk about the track record of the firm's team and what's stood out, which is all fine. But I don't know, there's no personal link here. Why does this individual specifically want to work at a firm with a strong real estate practice? Why does this individual want to work with a vast real estate portfolio? These are all questions that I'm still left wondering even after reading this. So you really need to put a bit more personal link here into explaining the why. Why does this interest you? That's the bit we really want to get into. That's the meaty bit. So these would be like the points you would make, saying, well, they have a strong practice, but why does that interest you? You know, you could build on what we were discussing earlier by saying you enjoy the multitasking aspect or the fast-paced aspect of real estate, and you're really keen on real estate, hence why you want to work at a firm with a leading real estate practice, which BCLP is. You can talk about perhaps reasons why you want to work on such a large project, and then be able to use that to explain why the BCLP real estate seat appeals to you specifically. So I would just add kind of a lot more here into the why. I think this is still very kind of general, and I want it to be more specific to this applicant, because I think any of us here tonight could say that if we attended the Legal Cheat Law Fair. There's no links to this specific applicant. Okay, well, we'll move on to the second half of their answer. Meanwhile, my personal interest lies within employment law. Again, I feel like this is a bit of a negative, because they've said, oh, I've heard that real estate practice is really strong, but they've used this kind of more negative linking word, meanwhile, which actually gives me the impression that they're actually not that keen on real estate. They just heard about how great the real estate practice was, but they don't have any personal interest in real estate. So I would remove that word. I would remove all of this. I would just say the other area which I'm really interested in having exposure to is employment. So I would change the way the paragraph starts off. Through my research, I can see this is a growing sector for BCLP, with over 110 employment lawyers in 21 offices around the world. So here, with them describing the size of the team, this is using up a lot of word count. And if this person wanted to save more of their word count to get into the reasons why real estate or employment interests them, make more links between the seats and their personal experience, I would look to cut this down. I would just say I can see that it's a growing, is it sectors or department? I'm not sure which term this firm uses, but you would just say, I can see that this is a growing sector, and you could delete that. But instead of this, after you say you can see that this is a growing sector, you need to add the why into there. So why is it that the fact that this is a growing sector, why does that interest you? So just thinking off the top of my head, I think if you're working in a team that is still growing, that essentially suggests that it's quite a new team. It might be quite a bit of a smaller team compared to the other teams within the firm, because it is a growing team. Or it might mean that there's a lot of opportunity to get into kind of new pieces of work because they're growing into different areas within employment. So if I were commenting on joining a growing team, I would probably say that because the team is still growing, there's real opportunity for a junior lawyer to get a high level of responsibility and a lot more exposure than they would get in another team. And then I would probably follow that up with saying, I learn best by doing. So I want that high responsibility to allow me to train in this seat. So you need a bit more of a why there. If I see you saying this interests you because it's growing, you need to explain why it interests you. It is a sector of law that navigates complex and often sensitive relationships. Employment law is people-driven and offers the ability to have ongoing and lasting positive effect on clients' lives. This can be demonstrated by the firm working to assist clients with issues in light of COVID, such as the furlough scheme, and they've assembled a task force to assist clients during these challenging times. Okay, so I can see that they've done a bit of additional research here into the employment team and what they've done. However, again, I think what's missing here is the personal link. So they said they're interested because it's a people-driven area. So this person's CV also indicated that they worked in a restaurant as front of house for a while as a part-time job. And I would try to make a link between that and the people-driven aspect of employment law. So I might say there, having worked as a front of house, I understand the importance of developing relationships, or the importance of building good interpersonal relationships, and link that people aspect of your part-time job with the people aspect of this area of law, just to be able to explain why the people-driven aspect of this attracts you. And then here as well, this is very descriptive. They've just kind of given a list of things that the employment law team has done. Again, why do these things interest you? Why has the fact that this team put together a task force interests you? And if we remember here, they've asked about, what we find attractive about the departments. So here we might think, okay, they've really taken initiative here and done something quite different, or created something very specific to suit their clients' needs. So you might want to make a point here that, from the fact that the employment team have done this, you can tell that they're a team that are very quick to react to the client's needs. And, you might then refer to your other experience. Say we can refer back to the front of house experience that, you've always put the customer as priority in front of everything else, and you want to join a team that has the same approach towards their work. So you can therefore explain why this specific task force is something that attracts you to the department. Then finally here, they've said the firm's dedication to its clients and loyalty highlights the firm's values and culture, fosters a supportive and friendly environment for its trainees, promoting professional and personal development. And reasons like this, matched with the high caliber of work offered, make BCLP stand out as an organization I would like to be part of. So if we think about what's being said in this little paragraph down here, they're essentially saying kind of why they want to join the firm. But if I go back to the question, they've not asked what you're attracted to about BCLP. They've asked about the sectors and departments. And I mean, even adding here, if you add in here the sectors and departments kind of wording, you can at least kind of indicate you're answering the question. But I feel like this just kind of reads to me as a bit random. It doesn't really follow on from kind of the discussion about the real estate team and the employment team. It's kind of maybe a good answer to a different question, but it doesn't seem to specifically address this question. So this is the kind of, I think, reviewing you guys want to be doing when you look over your own apps after you've drafted them. Does every single part of it answer the question? Because I would say this doesn't, and I think they need to kind of reframe this, the supportive and friendly environment. They need to reframe that in a context that's applicable in relation to the sectors and departments. So, I mean, a way they could do that is if they did speak to someone within the real estate team, so a trainee doing their seat there, they might have heard from the trainee about the supportive and friendly environment. So they could then say, that's why I'm interested in this specific department at the firm. So you just need to reframe this a little bit in order to make it fit the question. And I think a lot of the time when, although I'm saying this doesn't answer the question at the moment, you only need to tweak it a little bit to reframe it. So I'm not saying they need to completely remove it or it's completely wrong. It just doesn't flow and it doesn't clearly answer the question. Right. Gosh, I've been speaking for a really long time. Has anybody got any questions or comments about this application answer? I know this one was a bit different. It wasn't the typical why this firm question, but I think everything that I've been saying in terms of that you need to evidence things, you need to add those personal links are very relevant towards the question that just asks, why are you interested in BCLP? Okay. I think if there's no further questions or comments, I might leave it at this question for tonight. I'm conscious you guys have already spent over an hour with me, so I'm really grateful you've chosen to spend your time with me tonight. I hope that this has been really helpful. If you guys have any other questions for me at all, do feel free to ask them. It doesn't have to be to do with applications or application drafting. If you have any other questions you want to ask, please do so. I kind of picked YouTube as the platform to do this on because I thought it's just an easier way to hang out because I can share my screen and we have a chat that's like a bit bigger than the Instagram chat as well. So yeah, now's your opportunity, but I'm glad you guys are finding this helpful. How can we effectively put across what we've heard about a firm from current trainees? So I think it's the same as any other point you want to put across. Essentially, something I like to tell my mentees actually is to think about the way they structure any answers they write. So I don't know if you guys did this in school, but when I was in school and in English literature, our teachers always taught us to use the P structure. So they would say, make your point, explain your point, or use some evidence, and then explain. I'm not sure which way around it is, but I think when you're writing apps, you want to make your point, explain your point, which is why. So if we're saying the point is supportive and friendly environment, well, actually, that's not a very good point because it's quite obvious why. Okay, let's just go back to the employment example. That's people driven. Okay, so this is the point we're making, the fact that it's people driven. And I mean, if this is something you've heard from a current trainee, you would just say, you know, I've spoken to a trainee, and even better if you name that trainee, if you can say, I spoke to Shannon Tong at the Legal Cheek Law Fair, and she told me how the employment team have a really people-driven approach in the way they work and in the way they advise their clients. This leads me to be interested in the employment team because I'm a very people-driven person. I've worked as front of house, and from that, you know, I really understand the importance of developing positive interpersonal relationships. So that would be the evidence. I hope this is making sense. But yeah, I would definitely try to think with every point you're making, have you followed it up with the explanation? Why? So I am a people-driven person, and then I understand interpersonal, or rather the importance of. So yeah, I don't think there's any kind of particular structure you would use differently if you're talking about something you've heard from current trainees. I think you would just follow the same structure as you would use for any other type of answer. But I would try to think, have I made a point? Have I explained why I'm interested in it for this reason? And have I given evidence, some type of personal link to really prove that I'm not just saying this, I actually mean it because I've done it in my own past experiences. Okay. Yeah. Again, I hope you guys found this helpful. If there's any other live streams you can think of that would be helpful to you guys, like maybe CV reviews or anything else, do let me know. I did have one final slide on here, which were key takeaways. Oh, I didn't talk about STAR with competence because we didn't cover the competency question, but I'm sure you guys are all familiar with STAR. If you don't know it, look it up. So I think if you're answering a why question, always make sure you're explaining and giving evidence. If you're answering a competency question, make sure you're using STAR, which is setting out the situation, what the task was, what action you took, and your results. Think about your writing style. I cannot reiterate how important your writing style is. Make it easy to read. I think it's easy to think, oh, I should use like I don't know, like legal jargon to show that I can do this job or something. But the people reading your apps don't want that. They just want to know about you and why you're interested in the farm. So just keep it simple. Make sure you're answering the question. So really check with every paragraph you write. Has this got any relevance to the specific things that they're asking within the question? And yeah, make sure you're answering every element of the question as well. Like if we just go back up to this first question about commercial awareness, this question actually had quite a lot of elements to it. They wanted you to discuss the case. They wanted to know why it interested you and what the implications. So that's something, you know, you want to make sure you're doing, that you're answering every single element of the question. And then I think I've banged on about personal links enough here. Hopefully you guys all kind of understand what I mean now when I'm talking about personal links, but these are the key takeaways. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. You guys all know where to find me. If there is anything else you guys want to chat more about, you know, you can always just DM me on Instagram and I'll try my best to help. Again, remember that, oh my God, I feel like I'm losing track of what I'm saying. I've been talking for so long. Sorry, I don't know where I was going with that. But yeah, final words. Again, thank you so much to TCLA for sponsoring this. Without them, this live stream wouldn't have been possible. So I'm super grateful for their support on this. Make sure you guys check them out. And that's all from me. I hope you guys all have a good night and thank you for coming. Bye.